All right, so we're going to begin this week's review by just talking about the difference between civil liberties and civil rights. It is really important to understand that they're not the same thing. Civil liberties are really about the things that the government cannot do to you. The purpose of civil liberties is to protect you from the government and from abuse of power by the government. So think back to the Revolution and all of the things that Great Britain was doing to the colonists that we didn't like. The Bill of Rights were put in there so that we would not have a government like Great Britain that would restrict our rights and freedoms. Civil rights, on the other hand, are things that the government should do for you to ensure that you are treated equally to your fellow citizens. So this would be things like voting rights falls under this. Getting rid of the poll tax or giving women the right to vote. Those are civil rights. In addition to this, discrimination in the workplace would be something that the government should step in and make sure that that does not happen and protect you. So civil liberties, you could just consider the Bill of Rights are your civil liberties. And again, it is limitations on government power. Your civil rights come into play because of the 14th Amendment, which is the amendment that made African American citizens after the Civil War. And in this particular 14th Amendment, there's the Equal Protection Clause, which I'll talk about in a minute. So the civil rights requires the government to act to ensure that you are being treated equally before the law. All right, so let's take a look at the so important 14th Amendment, which is the amendment that also establishes due process with the federal government. All right, important parts that we need to know are in Section 1. It says here, beginning here, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So this part is so important, the due process clause, because it takes the federal Bill of Rights and our national constitution and says that it also applies to the states. All right. Prior to this, excuse me, each individual state had their own constitution, but this amendment is basically going to allow for incorporation of the Bill of Rights to apply to the states. And so selective incorporation is when we take one of the amendments or part of an amendment and through a Supreme Court decision, they have said that it also applies to state laws. Now, not all parts of the federal Constitution, Bill of Rights, have been incorporated, but most of the amendments have through cases, and many of those cases are the ones that are in the right column on your review sheet that we need to know. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time going into each individual case because I want you to make note cards from the Supreme Court cheat sheet that I have linked this week on Schoology. All right. The second part of the 14th Amendment says, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction equal protection of the laws. So the Equal Protection Clause is what defines the concept of civil rights, that the government must act to make sure people are treated equally before the law. So that is the part that would relate to civil rights. Due process of law really are the ideas and concepts in the Bill of Rights.